Hello and welcome to Türkiye Talks. This week we are going to talk about recent operation of Türkiye in Syria after a terrorist attack in Istiklal Street of Istanbul. I'm joined by Mehmet Ali Uğur from Yalova University. Welcome to our show, Professor. And as always, Kadir Üstün from Washington. So, Kadir, welcome. I'll start with the professor, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, please.
Yeah. This is part of ongoing operations of Turkey in northern Iraq and Syria against the PKK, YPG, and all other actually terrorist organizations. But this came after a bombing attack in Istanbul, in which at least 6 people lost their lives, several people got injured, and Turkey launched this operation at the weekend. And one of the explanations was Turkey did this operation under UN charter, which enables countries to defend themselves, justifiable self-defense clause. Maybe we can explain like this. Professor, what do you think this is a valid pretext for Turkey after this terrorist action? How can we evaluate this in terms of legal side, maybe the international law point of view?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, first of all. In many occasions when we just come across with discussions on the operations of Turkey in Syria, either the current one or the previous ones, I think in many situations we just miss the point, as you mentioned, the most important side of the issue, which is the legal part. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just summarize very briefly the current notion of international legal aspect of the issue. The international system, as we know today, is based on just very simple, easy to define principles. One is non-intervention, the other one is inviolability of international borders, and also respecting each other's sovereign existence. So this is basically what we are based on, what we based on our relationships with vis-a-vis other members of the international society. So what we can understand from these very basic pillars of international system is this: if there is a violation, an attack, a cross-border attack, or some sort of elements which do not fall into the definition of a state, then the state under attack can do few things. First, of course, they just ask the other members, respected members of international community, to just take a note and show solidarity, show respect, and so that they can understand each other. You know, if something of a similar nature happens to another member, then of course we need to show the same kind of reaction. So this is something we have to take a note first. So after this, of course, the country under attack or a violation expects some sort of support from the members of the community. In our time, the most important element, the most important representative, let's say, of state solidarity, as we know, is United Nations. So you mentioned already there is an article in United Nations Charter specifically authorizing the states to defend themselves if there is an attack by another country or attack from any kind of cross-border elements. Of course, you have a natural right to defend yourself, show technically something we call a reprisal. So if somebody attacks on you, somebody breaks the law, obviously, as long as you don't show the aggression first, and somebody attacks on you, you have the natural, inalienable right to defend yourself by using your military, military organization, let's say. So in this case, first, you just noted that there was an attack, a heinous crime, heinous attack on civilians at the heart of Istanbul. So the first thing Turkey did was just asking international community just to show some sort of solidarity with Turkey. And as we know, this is only one single example, just because it happened in Istanbul. Because of that, it received so much attention. But we know that that sort of attack was not only once. It didn't happen only once. It happens on a daily basis. From time to time, it happens on our Syrian border. And unfortunately, just because that part of the country is below the radar, I mean, there are small towns, the villages, and so on. And it doesn't mean that the lives of those civilians at the border of Turkey with Syria is no less important than the lives of the people just having a very good time Sunday afternoon or morning in Istanbul. So that's why there is an accumulated number of incidents. So after that only, Turkey decided to take necessary measures. This is the first thing we have to take note. So this is one thing. Another thing is that we assume that the members of international community live side by side, and they have to take necessary measures so that no attack, no unwanted shooting incident takes place between, one side of the border to the other side. So we know that the attack came from the area under what we know as the state of Syria. But unfortunately, we know that at least for the last 10 years, that part of the Syrian territory is not under control of Syrian government. So if there is no government functions, if the government is not able to control their own territory, unfortunately, there is one element of statehood is missing. In that case, it is only the state under attack that they can take their own right by their own hands. And in this case, as I can say in summary, Turkey is taking whatever Turkey is right.
Yeah, so maybe this is one of the reasons why there was not very strong reaction to what Turkey has done, because I remember in the past, whenever Turkey did a cross-border operation, all the capitals, all the foreign ministers, especially in the Western countries, they were running to criticize Turkey. Kadir, this time we heard from the Secretary of State from the US government, US administration. In a way, they didn't react very quickly, and when they made the statement, actually, I think it was acceptable for Turkey. What do you think about the statement? I think it came from Kirby. So what can you tell us, the spokesperson?
Well, in many ways, the US reaction has been typical of the past, let's say, year and a half, 2 years under Biden administration. They do talk about, warn against sort of raising tensions and creating more instability in the region, but at the same time, they don't directly criticize Turkish operations, Turkish military operations. There have been, there has been a certain degree of discipline in their messaging. But we discussed this issue many times in this program, Bora. The underlying tension is there. The disagreement over the broader Syria policy, the US continued support for the YPG, PKK Syrian branch, which apparently, according to Turkish sources now, Turkish security forces and Turkish intelligence, they were culpable in the most recent attack in Istanbul. So as Professor Uğur described on self-defense articles based on the concept of self-defense, Turkey is conducting these operations. And they've done that very carefully in the past in Iraq, especially since the early 2000s. Turkey in the 90s especially as well, when the PKK, terrorism was at its height. Turkey was very careful to legally explain itself, its own operations in Iraq. And in Iraq, we didn't hear many criticisms. On Syria, it's a mixed bag, especially, you know, the CENTCOM had operations against ISIS. They allied with YPG on the ground. They've even promoted them openly through their Twitter account and other instances of, you know, giving out photo ops and everything like that. So it's not a good picture for Turkish-American relationship. But Syria operations are more complicated. Professor Uğur alluded to it. You know, there's no state exactly to. I mean, in Iraq too, you have a divided country. But in Syria, it's even more so than Iraq in some ways, because there are foreign powers on the ground, including, you know, Russia, Iran, United States, Turkey as well. So it makes the picture more complicated, and it comes down to more about these countries, what their strategies are and what they're trying to accomplish, more so than the legality of their actions. But again, Turkey was once again carefully describing its actions based on self-defense. But that's, you know, that's not the only justification for Turkey. Since 2014, especially, ISIS and PKK have been running wild in northern Syria, and that's been causing trouble for Turkey, causing threat. And I think I want to actually ask Professor Uğur something about this, right? So we have the traditional concept of self-defense, like you described, between nation states. If one attacks another, you have a right to self-defense. But especially after 9/11, concept of self-defense and, you know, pursuing terrorists across borders, that has been really enlarged, and it's become a much more murky situation where you have states, but you also have sub-state actors that are often even more powerful than the central state, and they actually pose threat to other countries. And you know, do you feel like international law needs to work on this more? Because I feel like there is quite a bit of insufficiencies, perhaps, or, you know, areas where traditional self-defense concept does not really, you know, take care of the whole problem. What do you do, right? When a non-state actor attacks you, then of course you're going to defend yourself, but then there are other considerations, including other states and other powers on the ground.
Well, that's exactly, you pointed pretty precisely. As you said, I mean, when we just well, the current states formed the current format of international society, specifically the UN system. They didn't foresee that in less than 1 century, many of the rules would become obsolete, and this is unfortunately what happened. So right now, this is, I think, what is happening. So in 1945, when the system was created, everything was just defined in accordance with the concept of war. So the system just decided to, or tried to, limit the states just engaging in declared warfare. So if there's a very, very important toy in your hand, and unfortunately you are so much fond of playing with the toy, so probably you would end up finding a way, a different kind of way, so that you can still keep playing with it. Unfortunately, this is what happened. This is my reading. That's why after 1950s and 60s and so on, after that time, we see lots of international controversies in not in that type of international warfare, rather the situations, the fighting and taking in the territory of the recognized entity. So that's why we have something else comes to the attention of us, as you pointed out. It's the concept of terrorism. So how can we just show solidarity or change the nature of international legal system so that it can recognize, feel the existence of terrorism at the same time? Unfortunately, this is a very elusive quest, if you will, to find a legal definition of terrorism. This is going to be a cliche, but unfortunately, I'm going to say this. One's terrorist is another's freedom fighter. So this is so sad that and frustrating that many states are just finding some kind of strategic interest in defending or supporting or feeding the terrorists of another country. And that's why the major thing between the Turkey and United States is the discrepancy between the definition of terrorism by Turkish state versus definition of who the terrorists are according to the leadership of United States. And regretfully, nothing changes. Pretty much, I don't feel any difference between the democratic governments, administrations versus Republican administrations, even though from American point of view. I mean, if you go to Washington, D.C. or elsewhere in the United States, probably they will tell you lots of difference between the policies of this administration versus that administration. And unfortunately, when I look from this vantage point from Turkey and from our borders, unfortunately, I cannot see much of a difference between the two. And also, you mentioned about, Bora and you, both of you, mentioned about a rather balanced kind of reaction from, particularly from the US side. I noticed that, and I followed their, messages about showing their solidarity with Turkey, about what happened to civilian lives, this and that. And also after the latest attack, cross-border attack from Ain el Arab, or what some people call it Kobani, that caused the life of a 5-year-old little kid. And still, we hear messages from the American embassy in Turkey saying that we are feeling so sad that the people are dying, or civilian people died. And I just couldn't keep myself and message them saying that, do you have any idea, or would you like to explain what you think about who are the perpetrators are? Well, this is my feeling, actually. I'm so frustrated, and I know that overwhelming majority, almost all of us, so frustrated that the messages, the reactions coming from the Western capital cities are, yes, it's not just very tough on Turkey in this time around, but unfortunately it's not like showing the address or who are the perpetrators, who caused the killings. They never say so. I am absolutely so frustrated about that.
Yeah, I personally, yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think part of the story, especially when you read Western media, the US media, when they write about this YPG and PYD, they refrain from, in most cases, saying that this is an affiliated organization with the PKK, which is recognized as terrorist organization by the US itself, because probably some people are trying to hide some facts from the American taxpayers, because with their money, their weapons and their resources are being directed to a terrorist organization. So that's why we don't see much explanation when it comes to Turkey's struggle with the PKK. Many times we see in Western media they portray Turkey's operations as against Syrian Kurds or against Iraqi Kurds, which is not the case. We all know that Turkey is very careful about not hurting the civilians. Turkey is also trying to defend the rights of the Kurds, not only in Turkey but also in other countries. But my feeling is some people are trying to hide facts from American taxpayers. I have a question about this Kobani or Ain al Arab. We remember that after 2019, when Turkey did Operation Peace Spring to establish a safe haven, a corridor in Turkey's southern border, 30 kilometers deep, which stopped after the United States and Russia guaranteed Turkey that these areas will be free of terrorist organizations. So we have a memorandum of understanding with Russians and with the Americans as well. Since then, Turkey stayed away from, Turkey was very careful about not doing operations in these pockets, in this safe corridor. But for the first time since then, Turkey did operations and hit targets in Ain al Arab, or as known in the Western media, Kobani. Do you think this is a message, together with, if we read it with the Turkish president's statements recently, he's talking about a land operation. So do you think there is a change in Turkey's attitude in regards to these pockets in that corridor?
Is this a question for me? Oh, thank you. I believe so. Well, of course, I cannot really read the minds of people. I cannot read the mind of Mr. President, President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. But I feel like that is the case. So in the past, as you summarized, Turkey wanted to certain level coordinate with the United States, especially. They are the NATO allies with us in the #1 organization to defend the Western interests as well as Turkey's interests, and also Turkey had a chance to have an understanding with Russia in that sense. So it made it possible for Turkey to keep the control of a corridor, as you pointed out, and also they guaranteed that they would not allow any terrorist activities within that specific border area, so that it can secure Turkey's security interests. So when there is a disagreement among the parties, this is one of the easier, the 101 elements of a negotiation table, which is you have to tell the sides what is your interest. Okay, so what are you interested in? Turkey said, my interest is not about controlling the land of the state of Syria. We are not in that. We don't have an interest of taking the land of another country, so on and so forth. So what we are interested in is the safety of our civilians, our citizens on our border, the Turkish side of the border. As long as you just guarantee us that no terrorist activity will take place within this corridor of, was it 21 miles? And this is what I remember, or 30 kilometers deep. So that was the case, I think. And that was the promise given to Turkey. And unfortunately, at this point, what we see is the promises are not kept. And is it surprising? To me, it's not. I was expecting that. So because those kind of promises were given so many times. Just one example, that the same kind of promises were given to Turkey about who is going to be in control of Münbiç. Okay, so after that promise was given, unfortunately, that was not kept, or they didn't live up to their promises. So unfortunately, I'm not surprised. I wish I was surprised in it, but I'm not. So that's why they didn't keep the promise. And this time, as I pointed out at the beginning, if you are trying to coordinate with the related members of the international community, in this case, Russia and United States, of course, these are the first two. And then if they are not just listening your priorities, if they are not helping you in protecting your territory and civilian lives, then unfortunately there is no other chance, no other way of defending yourself other than just doing your own business with your own hands. So this time around, I believe that, well, I am not just warmongering, okay? This is not my position, but from the line of events that took place, especially since 6 or 7 years, I can start with in this process with the first operation of Turkey, Fırat Shield, I think that was the name, in 2016. So since then, Turkey is just, summarizing what the interest of Turkish state is, and then we ended up seeing that the promises are not kept. So in this case, I believe the Turkish side, the Turkish president, is not just looking for another set of promises. And of course, there is one other element in this. So this time around, we know that even though these are not 100% related, but the hands of Russia is quite a bit full in Ukraine. So I think in this case, it is easy for Turkey to at least understand each other with United States, I think.
Kadir, what is your take on this issue? Do you think if Turkey does a land operation to Kobani, to Ain El Arab, do you think there will be a big reaction from American side? What do you think about it?
I mean, we could expect criticism. We could expect sort of discomfort, expression of discomfort, etc. That has happened in the past many times. And if Turkey is, conducting a military operation, I don't think ultimately they will care so much about what, the US says, or, the level of discomfort in Washington. It's not obviously good for bilateral relations, but I think the US side will focus on what their, forces on the ground. Exact numbers are not known. As you know, they're in a quote-unquote support role. They're training these forces, but under Biden, they've basically told them, we're fighting with you against ISIS, but against Turkey, you're kind of on your own. But in practice, in real life, that's not how it happens, of course. When you're training and supporting, and then you're embedded with these YPG forces, when they're attacked, that's not an easy thing to say, okay, you're on your own. So we could expect criticism, and how much of a sort of conflict is going to create between the US and Turkey, that is, I don't know. That would be speculation, but we've had the sort of biggest example of that under Trump in 2019, when Trump wanted to, pull out, and Turkey was threatening operations on the ground. US Congress especially, and the media, like you mentioned, was all over this. They were very, anti-Trump largely, and because Trump wanted to leave Syria, they thought that Erdogan convinced Trump to do that. Erdogan actually didn't really ask America to leave Syria. It was more about drop your support for the YPG and let's work on a common strategy. But that message has not been heard in the US well, or they're kind of ignoring that message largely. But at the end of the day, President Erdogan asked a simple question, like, what is your goal? What's your strategic goal in northern Syria? And that answer has not been given, because it can't be really given as answer about strategy, because if you remember 2014, the reason that US forces got involved in Syria after, several years of Turkey calling on them to respond to chemical attacks and everything like that, the reason US forces ended up entering the field and supporting YPG was ISIS. ISIS made the headlines. They unfortunately decapitated in terrorist attacks decapitated some US journalists, and Obama administration could not basically bear the headlines, and they needed to respond. I'm simplifying, obviously, because ISIS was also threatening national borders between Iraq and Syria. They set out to establish a caliphate, violating international borders of two countries, although those borders were very, elusive. Sorry, I'm going into a history lesson here, but the basic point I'm trying to make is when the US got involved in Syria and supported YPG, they reassured Turkey that, the support would be limited and temporary. And now we are 8 years away from that promise. That's one of the promises not kept, as Professor Uğur mentioned. So there's no strategy there. The strategy right now is more of a reactionary one. If we leave, right, Russia, this will help Russia, this will help Iran. That's how they're looking at it, the US. There's some truth to it. There's no denying that, if the US packed up and left, that would be to the benefit of perhaps Iran and Russia. But that's not really the answer to this. It's not an either or thing. The point that Turkey has been making for years now, these are NATO allies, US and Turkey. They need to have a common strategy. That's the only way. It's not a matter of US leaving or staying. American policymakers or general sort of foreign policy community tends to make these either or analyses to kind of avoid answering the real question. The real question is, what should be the strategy, right? And how that strategy should be formed through cooperation with allies. In this case, your best ally is Turkey. Despite all the problems you've had with Turkey in the past, that is the case. So I don't see a willingness on the part of the Biden administration to sit down and take a hard look at their Syria policy. They'd rather keep it sort of at this level, not making the headlines, but not achieving much other than not leaving the ground to, Russia and Iran. But then things don't stay stable like that, right? Things happen. And it happened in Turkey that there was a big attack in Istanbul, 6 people and many injured, 6 people lost their lives, and it is traced back to northern Syria. So what are you going to do when Turkish, army is preparing to enter northern Syria, perhaps? It is, from the perspective of the US-Turkey relationship, it's not a healthy situation. We talked about this many times, Bora, that if you look back at our videos, we've warned about this, right? Things will not simply stay stable as you like them to be. You can't freeze these things. But if you have a working relationship and if you're in the process of creating a common strategy, then it would be much better, much healthier, both to address the threats on the ground, but also to continue the relationship in a healthy way. Right now, basically, the strategists in Pentagon, they're hyper focused on strengthening their relationship with YPG on the ground in the name of fighting ISIS, but it's not addressing the larger strategic goals and questions.
Yeah, well, before ending this program, I want to ask Professor Uğur about the Russian stand. You already mentioned a little bit. You said that they are already busy in Ukraine and they have other things to sort it out. But what do you think if Turkey decides to do a land operation, or if Turkey continues this kind of operations? What do you think will the Russians do? what will be their reaction?
Well, first thing first, I think we need to just put a distinction between Turkey's relationship with United States, despite all these problems that Kadir already mentioned, between United States, Turkey versus Turkey with Turkey's relations with Russia. One is strategic, well, even though we have problems with that strategic relationship, but the other one is contractual. This is, I think, simple, in its simplest way we can define the difference between the two. So we are going, Turkey is going with Russia mostly on a contractual kind of relationship. So if that is the case, I mean, certain things are just working quite well especially in the Green Deal, and the Turkey is being a venue for the Russian gas to the markets, the world markets, etc., etc., etc. So in that case, Turkey has a working relationship with Russia, particularly because of the personal link between the Turkish president and Russian president. So if we just take the situation to the north of Black Sea, unfortunately, the situation in Ukraine is not that promising for Russia. So if we take that into consideration, it's very likely that Russia will not be quote-unquote so harsh on Turkey if Turkey is to start a land operation in the northern Syria. So if we take that as a given, I mean, as one possibility, then I think the best thing Turkey and United States can do is just like Kadir just put briefly moments ago, is to just reconsider the basics, the most important elements of the strategic relationship. On the Russian side, I don't think taking the current situation, particularly in what happened in Kherson, if we remember what the Russian army had to just retreat to the other side of the Dnieper River, probably there won't be a big reaction, a very harsh reaction from the Russian side if such a land operation takes place.
Yes, that's so true. Thank you very much for your comments, Professor Uğur. Kadir, do you have anything to add to this, or we are closing?
Thank you
for inviting, by the way.
Thank you very much, Professor Mehmet Ali Uğur from Yalova University and Kadir Üstün from Washington. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time.